I'm Cheryl. I'm a volunteer here at George Washington Carver National Monument, and I've been a volunteer here for many years, since my kids were little, and now their kids are coming too. And I've been a volunteer at Prairie Days making lye soap for many years. So if you've been here and watched the lye soap lady, that'd be me. And we're so glad to be able to do this today and show you a little bit about how George and his family made their soap, their lye soap, each year. You know, when it's hog butchering time, you have all of this extra fat that you get from butchering the hogs. I know you guys know about butchering your hogs, and you have to do something with that fat. And the best thing to do, it's like gold, is you have to melt it down. And you know, the kids, like George, that was part of their job, was to do a lot of this hard work. And so you melt it down. It's a stinky job. And they would melt it down in a pot like this, big old heavy cast iron pot. And sometimes they would have a bigger one than this even, but over a fire normally. Now, I don't have a fire today because I'll tell you what we did a little bit different. But normally they would melt all of that lard, kind of like you do bacon, like bacon grease. You know, you see all the grease you get from the bacon, same type of thing. And then it makes, you know, a liquid, which I've already done that. So here's the liquid, and then we just pour the liquid into the pot, which I'm going to do. I don't have very much of it today. We just did a little bit, but normally, you know, we're talking from the hogs, so you'll have lots of lard, lots of grease, lots of oil for the beginnings of this lye soap. So after the lard gets all melted, and then there's some good little pieces of meat in there that's called cracklins, and you just eat those. And then, you know, the carvers would heat with wood in their fireplace or to cook, and the ashes from when you clean out the fireplace, the ashes from that wood, they would put it in this. This is called an ash hopper. And so they would pour, after they cooled, pour the ashes in here, maybe put some straw on the bottom, put some ashes down, put some more straw, and just fill it up with ashes throughout the year. And then when they were ready to make soap, maybe the rainwater, or they would maybe have to get some more water from the spring here, and they pour that water over the ashes in the ash hopper. And the water that leaches through the ashes, that goes through the ashes and comes out the bottom, there's a hole down here in the bottom, into a bucket, or they probably had a really big bucket. And then George would collect that water that leached through those ashes, that's called lye water. So that lye water, then they would pour it into this melted fat that they got from the hogs, and immediately it would start to turn into kind of a soap substance. It would change colors. The process is actually called saponification. So you have lye water, which is very acid and very, if you touch it, it'll burn your hands, and you know, the fumes will burn your nose and your lungs, so you never want to do that by yourself. But once you pour it into the lard, or into the melted fat, now you have a science project going on, and you have saponification, which will turn this fat and this lye water into soap. But it doesn't happen all of a sudden. You have to keep stirring, and then they keep heating it. Today we're doing it because we've already melted our oil here and our fat, so we can just pour the lye water right in and continue to stir it, and stir it and stir it, and pour it in very slowly, and then continue to stir it. And just depending on the fire and how hot it is, or depending on the ratio of lye water to lard, you know, sometimes they just didn't know. They just kept cooking it till it got thick. And the same thing we do when we do it cold. we just keep stirring it till it starts to get thick. And you know, that could be a job that, you know, the kids would do all day. George would make the lye soap at his home, and so they would just stir and stir and stir. Finally, it would get like pudding, and they would know that it was done because they'd kind of lift their paddle up and it'd start to make swirls on the top, and then you would know that it's about time. And some people would just, at that point, just leave it in the pot and dig it out when they needed it. I've heard people say that's what they did, but I know people did whatever was the most convenient for them. If you needed your pot later to make beans in or do your laundry in or something like that, well, then you had to get the soap out of the pot. So what we could do is, here's you a nice mold. Now, we like our soap all nice in bars and things like that. So you pour it into this mold flat, and it's pretty, like I said, like pudding or cake mix, and you just pour it in the mold and then leave it, and probably tomorrow we could cut it if we wanted to make bars out of it. Notice this is just one big old piece of soap right here. But tomorrow we could cut it and make it into bars, and like this. And this is some we made here last year at Prairie Days. And this was made with some lard we rendered from the hog, and so it's a little darker. And so you would cut it, but then you can't use that soap right away because lye soap has to continue to cure for maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, depending on the weather. And we'll pull it out of the mold and maybe stack it up so we can get some air around it, and turn it every few days and let the air get to it. And then you'll have, yeah, I'm sure that was probably one of George's jobs too, is to make sure the soap got cured correctly. And then you have plenty of soap for maybe in a month. For your laundry, they would use it for whatever dishes needed to be washed, for bathing, for anything that you had to wash. And you know, lye soap sometimes people think it's very harsh, but once it cures, it's very, very mild. So you can use it for the baby in the bath, you wash your hair with it. You know, it tends to keep the ticks and chiggers off of you, not from anything magic, but mostly because there's no perfume in it. There's nothing to attract the bees and the bugs. So we have just a scentless soap to be used. And then, of course, George did laundry, and it makes great laundry detergent. Gets your whites all clean, and great for washing your face and anything you need to do. One size fits all soap. So it was hard work and a stinky job at first, but once it cures, it doesn't stink at all. It's just kind of scentless. And so that was just one of the things that George had to do. That was one of his jobs, and we know he made lye soap, and we know his family used it every day for all of their cleaning and their daily living. So thank you for listening and learning, and we hope you will come to Prairie Days again next time that we get to see you in person.